Welcome to Voice of Jessie, with a new and entrusting story, The Doorway Home. Eleanor had always lived her life as if under constant review. From the perfectly arranged breakfast table her mother meticulously scrutinized each morning, to the polite but critical assessments from her piano teacher, Mrs. Gable, who could detect a missed note with the precision of a bloodhound. Every action, every word, every choice was filtered through the lens of external approval. Her first serious relationship, with a charming but demanding artist named Julian, had only amplified this internal pressure. Julian's love felt like a constant audition. He adored her creativity, but only if it aligned with his vision. He praised her intelligence, but often corrected her opinions. Their apartment, a minimalist temple of Julian's design, felt less like a shared space and more like a gallery where Eleanor was merely another curated exhibit. She found herself subconsciously altering her clothes, her laugh, even her preferred brand of coffee, to fit into the sleek, abstract mold he admired. She was constantly trying to measure up, to be the woman Julian imagined or wished she'd be. The love he offered felt conditional, a reward for passing inspection. One particularly harsh evening, after Julian had critiqued her latest painting with a dismissive wave of his hand, "It's good, Elle, but a little pedestrian. Where's the edge?" Something inside Eleanor finally splintered. She looked at the painting, then at Julian, then around the stark, unforgiving perfection of their living room. It hit her, a painful, undeniable truth. She wasn't coming home to Julian, she was performing. That night, she packed a small bag. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to leave. The city lights blurred through the taxi window, each one a silent judgment. She ended up at her eccentric Aunt Beatrice's house, a place she hadn't visited since she was a child. Aunt Bee lived in a rambling, slightly dilapidated Victorian home overflowing with books, mismatched furniture, and the scent of cinnamon and old paper. Aunt Bee, a woman who had never cared for societal expectations, simply opened the door wide when Eleanor arrived, tear-streaked and exhausted. "Eleanor, my dear, come in, come in. You look as though you've seen a ghost, or perhaps finally seen yourself." There was no interrogation, no "what happened?" or "what were you thinking?" Just a warm hug that smelled of lavender and acceptance. Aunt Bee ushered her into the cozy living room where a fire crackled merrily. "Sit, my love. Let me make you some tea." Over the next few weeks, Eleanor slowly began to unravel the tightly wound ball of expectations she had become. Aunt Bee's house was a haven of unapologetic authenticity. There were no rules about tidiness, other than not tripping over the piles of books. No judgments about artistic merit. Aunt Bee declared Eleanor's pedestrian, painting, utterly charming, and no pressure to be anything other than exactly who she was. One afternoon, Eleanor found herself in the attic, surrounded by old trunks and forgotten treasures. She unearthed a box of her childhood drawings, vibrant, messy, uninhibited creations that made her smile. She drew something new that day, for the first time in years, purely for the joy of it. It was a whimsical landscape, full of bright, clashing colors, utterly devoid of any edge Julian might have sought. Aunt Bee found her later, admiring the drawing. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she mused, without a hint of irony. "Real art comes from the heart, my dear, not from a committee." Eleanor realized then what true love felt like. It wasn't about conforming or impressing. It wasn't about reshaping herself to fit into a narrow doorway. Aunt Bee hadn't demanded she change. She had simply opened the door wide and let Eleanor walk in, exactly as she was, messy emotions and all. When the time came for Eleanor to move into her own apartment, she consciously sought out a place that felt like her, not like a showroom. It had mismatched chairs, a vibrant, slightly chaotic bookshelf, and a corner dedicated to her art, where her pedestrian painting hung proudly. She eventually met Daniel. Daniel, with his quiet smile and steady gaze, was nothing like Julian. He loved her for her quirks, her sometimes clumsy humor, her passionate arguments, and her unwavering kindness. He admired her art, not because it fit a certain style, but because it was hers. His love felt like a warm embrace, a safe harbor. One evening, as they sat on her mismatched sofa, sharing a meal she had happily botched, Daniel simply squeezed her hand and said, "It feels so good here, Elle. It feels like home." Eleanor looked around her apartment, at the vibrant chaos, at Daniel's genuine smile, and felt a profound sense of peace. She finally understood. Love, she had learned, was meant to feel like coming home, not like passing inspection or standing in front of someone who examines every part of you to decide whether you measure up. Real love meets you exactly where you are, not where someone has imagined or wished you'd be. It doesn't demand that you reshape yourself to fit into a narrow doorway. It opens the door wide and lets you walk in as you are. And in that wide-open doorway, Eleanor finally found herself.